Hello, everybody. This is Matthew Brand. Welcome to Detroit Food Talk. And today I'm talking about a controversial subject, and that is, do black people have bad customer service? Now, if you don't agree with me, this may upset you, so you're free to leave a comment. I just ask that you be respectful and please be civil about it. Now, if you do agree with me, also let me know what you think. I really would like to hear from you. But that being said, a lot of the time when it's questioned why black people don't have more businesses, why we don't frequent our own companies, why we don't pay our money into our own community, the question becomes that, do is it because black people have bad customer service? Sometimes crab mentality is brought up, but I'm not talking about that today. Today I want to talk about customer service. And personally, in my opinion, what I will say is that I don't think black people have bad customer service. Now, some people may say, well, that's because you're black, jackass. That's why you think that. But no, in all reality, my experience hasn't been that black people have worse customer service than other people. In fact, I would say I enjoy the customer service experience with black people typically more or better the farther away I get from the city. It just tends to be more sincere, more honest, more genuine conversations. And people really trying their hardest. They tend to be a lot more ambitious, a lot more knowledgeable than the average person. And I think it's from having to work harder to get where they are. What I will say is, based on the difference in their perception, I think that comes from one, if you have a bad experience, then you tend to remember it 10 times more than a good experience. That's biological. That's because that you can only be so happy, but on the other hand, you can be dead. So biologically, if something's bad or we dislike something, we remember it more to avoid it better. And I think what goes on is when you're in let's say in the city, because black people start start because of past systemic racism, even if you think of systemic racism today. But the point is, you can't argue that it was in the past. I think a lot of people argue when it ended. In my opinion, it ended more in the 80s. Some people who are more, have more right wing, far right talking points, they say it ended in I won't even say far right. I'll say they're more right wing cemented, right wing cemented talking points. They'll say it ended in the 60s, but in all reality, it ended more like in the 80s. So, and I mean legally. I don't even mean like culturally. I just mean legally. So, legally, a lot of the laws ended in the 80s, or I would say maybe the 70s. The law stopped, but progressively, they didn't really get the what was being done didn't really stop until the 80s. So you have up until at least the 80s where you know black people are being held back. Well, that's where our parents were adults, right? Our parents were adults in the 80s. So really our parents weren't allowed to get as far as they could have, if things were different for them earlier on. So a lot of black people are starting at a smaller starting point. And what I think the difference is let's say 10% of the population, they have a poor man's mentality. They don't do well. They're not, let's say they're not the best of the bunch, right? I think the problem is a lot of poor people get wrapped up together, right? So you could be poor for different reasons. You could be poor because of you, or you could be poor because that's where you're starting at and that's your starting point. You haven't gone far enough yet to make it somewhere. And those people get lumped together in when it comes to black populations or largely black populations. So for example, someone who's worked, this is a, I would say, a place I don't enjoy going to because of the poor customer service, and it's typically Popeyes. I'm just going to be honest. I don't care for going to Popeyes a lot of the time. I mean, I seen the guy at work at Popeyes. I saw one guy, very professional. They're both black. He was an older, not an older gentleman. I'd say he was probably like, you know, mid 30s, 40. He comes up to a man and talks to him about, why is he just sitting down? And the young man proceeds to cuss him out. Now, this person clearly his attitude is not going to get him far until he has an adjustment. I'm not saying that, he will never change. He's young. But overall, they're both black. So one has good customers, one is professional, the other one is not. And the problem, because comes when I say I do not like the freaking Popeyes, that lumps them both together. Because again, this may be the woman. The one man looks like he could just go work at any place and be professional. The one who was questioning him was like, "Excuse me, sir, why are you, you're still sitting down? Are you on the clock?" And he present the other person cussing him out. One person, you're like, okay, I wouldn't mind hiring him at my job based on the what I just saw. The other person, there's no way in the world I would hire him unless I was extremely desperate. And I think that's what happens is these places get desperate, so they hire whoever's around. There's not a large filtration process, or they're hiring family. I've seen that happen really bad too. Like they'll hire family, and that usually goes badly. But that being said, they're both starting at the same point, and you get lumped together. Where if you go to the suburbs, what you're getting is people who have already made it to a check, like they hit a checkpoint, so to speak. So they're a little bit farther, and the customer service your experience is went through a filtration process. You're getting people who worked harder. Now that doesn't mean they live in the suburbs. That just means that they have the transportation means to make it out that far. And so you're getting the people who have somewhat, made or done something to get to that ability to get far enough to, to do that. It's not saying that, oh, you have an ID, like something as minimum as getting an ID and your social security card just to get hired at a place. You did something to get a job, to get a car, to get some schooling, to get something, to make it that far out. Where the people in the city, they may just be walking to work. They may just have rode a bike there. They may have took the bus. There's no nothing separating them. And that's why a lot of times money is looked at as a morality code, even though it shouldn't be, is because, at least we know that you worked hard for something by how far you've gotten. Now, that doesn't always take place, because if you go into the suburbs, let's say, for example, you go to the suburbs and you have a woman and she lives with her family and her family pays all of her bills, but her family has a lot of money. That has nothing to do with what she's done. That just means that her family pays her bills. And you know what's funny is those people usually never want to go farther behind. They'll stay with their family long term, and they'll still live in a better area in a nicer place and have a nicer car because again they're mooching off of their family, which I'm not faulting them for. I actually think a lot of people would be better off if they worked hard and saved their money for 5 years while they let their family pay for everything. And even if you work a low income job somewhere you can walk to, or somewhere you don't have to pay to get to, that way you can save as much money as possible for 5 years. You're set, you're good, at least at the moment. Years from now, who knows what the economy is going to do. But these people, they were able to make it, but the ladder was kicked from underneath a lot of black people before they can get that far. So what really happens is a lot of people who are working positions they're not happy with, it tends to leak out and reflect. But with black people, they're starting at a lower position, and they tend to get lumped together with the people who would obviously stay in that position. Now, why doesn't this happen with other races? Why isn't this stereotype with other races that you encounter? Well, a lot of those races, including white people, came over after black people were already here. You'll be like, what are you talking about? White people were here before black people. Yes, but the majority of white people came during the mass immigration stage. You got, the Italians, Irish, Scottish, what they call them, Polish, and all that kind of different Europeans. A lot of those people, they came over later, in their second generation down. Like their grandparents may have been from Poland, maybe great grandparents, but for the most part, they just got over here way after the 1800s. Black people were here way before it, and that's why you also get a lot of stereotypes with, hodunk white people. It's not that white people are so much dumber than every other race. When you talk about these hillbillies and stuff like that, right? Cletus or whatever his name is from The Simpsons, right? That's not the majority of people, and that the ghetto, unprofessional stuff that you get where you go in the black areas, that's not the majority of people. It's just a percentage of the population, but these people get lumped together in certain areas. If your family hit on hard times and you had to move to a trailer park or something along those lines, you get lumped in with the people who also live in that particular trailer park. And people look at you a certain way, like, oh, you live in a trailer park? Oh, must have done something wrong. And if you automatically start getting money and you start making lots of money and the government gets on your back and everybody starts looking at you like, oh, you must have done something wrong. You know what happens with a lot of black people? And you think about it, they'll make a lot of money. They'll hire a tax professional. The tax professional will rip them off and steal their money, and then they go to prison for tax evasion. And everybody looks at them like, and that's what you get for trying to scam the system. This is a common occurrence. I think it happened to Steve Harvey. Uh, Supposedly, perhaps happened to Wesley Snipes. Like this happens to people, and they get these large overs, and a lot of them don't have, because they're the first people making it. They're the avant garde. They don't have the resources and the friends and the know how to navigate those waters the way a lot of people who their entire family is, and all their friends and all the people around them know, and all the people around them, have they've been learning from and bouncing off of each other. This person is facing the wilderness alone, so even more commendable to them. They made it and they paved the way for a lot of people, and now they're turn around and help each other. They come back and help the ones around them. Because when you see it, when you look at these people like Shaquille O'Neal, he does a lot to help the people around him, and it's amazing. That you're not going to walk around and call these people unintelligent. you know, a lot of these people have doctor's degrees and different stuff like that. Like these people are important, and they're not rude, they're not disrespectful, they speak eloquently, like, but they're the people who made it. The people who are just starting off, they haven't made it yet. All of them don't have bad customer service. They're not attitudinal, they're not unprofessional. They just haven't made it yet. They just, because their starting point is lumped in the same starting point, and it's also hard to get out of that starting point with the people who have the bad customer service, because again, the hurdles are so high. There's a lot of laws and regulations, and tax this and tax that, and suck your money away and pay this permit to get a business up and running. That is really hard to save up the money when the only jobs around you are low income. They're low hours. That's another thing that's not often talked about. Just work more. A lot of these jobs are low hours. They're high competitive. If you live in a city and everybody's working at this same little store, well, why should they be giving you the 40 hours when they, and why pay you overtime when they can be paying a bunch of other people? Then you get multiple jobs, and then you just end up kind of working yourself to death, because once you start actually making it somewhere, you may get robbed, or you may have a car breakdown. It's just too easy to lose everything. It just is. And then not to mention, if you went to school and you have the student loan looking over your shoulder, and or you actually started making some money, and then now the tax IRS are looking over your shoulder. It's rough. You can't even sell stuff on Facebook Marketplace without, now the IRS is looking at Facebook Marketplace like everybody's being treated like they're laundering money when they're just trying to like make it. It's sad, and they should really take down some of this. But again, people, every time someone speaks up about, oh, how we're not taxing people, and we're not taxing the rich, and we're not getting enough money, or we need more government systems and government intervention. Well, the government takes that from middle class, and usually the lower middle class, not in poor people. They don't take that more from rich people. um, they pretty much, rich people pay like 50-60% in taxes, so they're not really going to be taking much more from them. They're going to take it from the lower middle class, and that's what's happening. Like again, Facebook Marketplace is not something that people who make billions of dollars are doing. Like they're not sticking, Bill Gates and stuff aren't sticking like, use computers on their porch and just like, okay, just drop the money in the mailbox and I'll grab it later after you're done. Like, no, this is people who are just trying to scrape by. And to most of the people who made it, they just didn't have that monkey on their shoulder. That's just all there is to it. But now Now that there is, a lot of people are having a harder trouble getting somewhere, and black people especially, again, because they're starting at such a low point because of all the stuff that happened. And once again, I'm not saying that, oh, black people are poor, ergo they have bad customer service. I'm saying they are all lumped in at that much lower point. They get lumped together with people who don't work as hard, who don't, you know, try hard, who don't have good customer service, because that's what it's seen as. These low income jobs always have bad customer service, but if there's opportunities available, because let's say, for example, if you go out to the suburb, that's another example. If you go out to the suburb, you will find people working in that position who are unhappy about being there at whatever age that they're at. But the living for them will be comfortable if they had to stay at home with their family. It won't be controversial. It won't be looked at like, oh, you still stay at home. You're not trying to get out. You're trying to get to the point where when you do move out, your living situation will match that you have now. You want the same, what would you call it? Well, lifestyle standard of living. That's what it's called. You want the same standard of living. So these people just end up staying with their family forever, and if they lose their job, it's not a big deal. What's the hang up? Where a lot of black people, if they lose their job, they need that security, because if they lose their job, they lose the roof over their head. So they stay in those positions longer, and because they need the stability, they don't get to take as many, what would you say, as many risks. They're adverse to risk. So this is something that has to be thought about, and it doesn't mean that they have bad customer service, but they'll be lumped in with people who do, um, just because that's the nature of the job. If I went to somewhere out in the suburbs, you're going to get a lot more young people working in those positions. If you work out into the city, you're going to get older people, and they may be professional, but perhaps the young people won't be. And the young people now in those positions, they're not bothered because, again, they may be just as unprofessional. I've met plenty of young, unprofessional white people, trust me. But they get fired because, again, they don't care if they get fired. They don't care if they lose their job. They just simply don't care. It's not dependent upon the roof over their head. If they lose their job, they, well, I don't know, go on punishment, just find another job, or they just don't work. And it doesn't matter because their family has the income to take care of them. Where you're black, if you're young, you may be taking care of your family. It's way more likely that black people are work when they work, that they have to help pay rent at a way younger age. Is just because of the starting block. And you just don't know what you're getting when you walk into a store. It's just the fact of the matter. Now, how does that leak into why we don't own as many businesses? Personally, I think it's a whole different matter. I think, again, that's that starting point. I think it's a reflection of bouncing off of knowing other people who own businesses. We weren't allowed to own them before. So we're not surrounded by as many business owners. If you have a Greek family or Italian family or a Jewish family, a lot of them may already own businesses and you can learn from them or they can help you out. With us, we're shooting out in the dark. So I think they're similar but unrelated. Just kind of how, like, you know, mass rampage shootings are not the same as a shooting that involves like a street beef or something along those lines, so to speak. They're both shootings, but two different reasons. Somebody who's, attacks you because of road rage is not the same person who attacks you because they're trying to steal your wallet. They're two completely different reasons, so they need two different addressments. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Sorry if this was long. Sorry if you didn't agree with what I said. If you do, I just ask that you be respectful. Leave a comment. Let me know. If you do agree with what I said, please leave a like and subscribe. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Peace.